Hello, I'm Richard Pritzloff, president of the Biophilia Foundation. I'm down in Patagonia, Arizona with Kurt Vaughn, who's the executive director of Borderlands Restoration Net. Back in 2011, Ron Pulliam, who's a founding partner of BR with myself and a few other people, was my mentor on a course that I was required to do at Prescott College. And it had to do with the ideas behind what we're calling a restoration economy. Specifically having to do with putting in rock check dams and the kinds of things that Valeria Clark has done at Cuencos Los Ojos in Sonora, Mexico. Bringing in small check dams or large gabions, and we'll show pictures of those, to hold back water and bring in sediment and reattach rivers to their floodplain after they've been incised by historic overgrazing in the past. And then the idea of what those more productive lands, how would they then contribute to livelihoods and revenue for landowners, but also livelihoods and skills and jobs for the local community. So that was sort of the conversation we had. BR started out in 2012 and purely doing the rock check dams and restoration, and soon saw the need for plants and seed for those restoration projects, and that's grown into a big part of BRN. And about 3 years ago now, we all got together to decide where we were going to go from those humble beginnings, and that was the beginning of Borderlands Restoration Network, of which we are fortunate to have Kurt as our executive director. And like I said, you've been here about 1.5 years, so you're a veteran at this point. And
just beyond brand new, I guess. I guess I want to start off with just saying that none of the work that we have been able to do and accomplish here in these last couple of years, and really I would not be here if it were not for the support of Biophilia Foundation. What we've been able to, our main focus is building that restoration economy. That's underpins all of the work that we do. And the way in which we go about doing that work is by rebuilding watersheds, so addressing the fundamental and underlying physical processes that have gone awry due to a number of different degradative processes. So addressing those watershed needs. And then once we've kind of stabilized soil through rock structures or other means, we're able to then address the habitat needs in those places. So go back and improve the biological processes there. So that's either by direct planting or more passive restoration means. And then the third element, and that really infuses all of the work that we do, is reconnecting people back to the land. So we take every opportunity in all of the work that we do to either create meaningful employment or create educational and inspirational opportunities for our local communities. So because the way that we see a economy working is it's really a collection of relationships, and it's about reorienting those relationships so that they benefit the community, and that's how we build resilient communities, and that's how we build a local economy, is reorienting those economic relationships to point toward each other, and that's how we build all of each other up. That's really the kind of focus that we've been able to pursue, thanks in great part to the support from the Biophilia Foundation.
That's great. I really like how you put that, of reconnecting people and relationships with the ecology or the ecosystem in which we all depend, and is in and of itself that we are connected to.
Right.
So that's a great way to put it. And that really, from the roots of the words economy, I mean ecos, home. We kind of have gotten away from that, I think, with more materialistic and anthropogenic, or yeah, that's what I mean, anthropogenic perspective on the world. It's really like we've forgotten that connectedness and how important it is, not only for us as human beings, but also in terms of sustainability and how we live going forward.
Yeah, because the default economy that we've all inherited and unfortunately have little recourse other than to support values taking from our ecology, from the environment, and commodifying those resources and selling to be used. But really, a better or a more regenerative system is one in which we can produce from our ecology products in which benefit and continue to create biological wealth in our local ecosystems.
Yeah.
So that is the kind of fundamental change in which we're thinking about how we sort of still go about fulfilling the needs of our people, our local economy, and all of the items that we use and need, but thinking about it in a more holistic way of how we can turn that process on its head and make it beneficial to our economy, our environment, and our communities.
I wanted to ask you too about how BRN expanded from the restoration work, which had to come first, to then plant propagation and sort of the logical, to me, logical procession into now trying to build a restoration economy. How would you describe that progression?
Well, I think it's I think it's almost as a natural process as it has evolved out of an original focus on addressing an ecological need, which was watershed restoration, and then moving into pollination-based, understanding that we can take care of these processes, but not the plants and animals that depend on those weren't necessary. We're needing some help as well, and then scaling out to the next level of like, okay, well, in order for the long-term sustainability of those projects, we also need healthy communities around to support them. And so kind of taking that next leap out to, all right, well, how do we best embrace the communities in which we're working, and how do we best support their local development of their economy, and how do we tie all of that together? And really, like, taking the next step out from that is how do we do it more regionally throughout the Borderlands, because part of our mission is to work in southern Arizona and northern Sonora, and we do have projects on both sides of the border, but we have been focused more in the communities in which we live and work.
Sure.
And so we've been now trying to take a larger view, and that includes expanding beyond the work that our one independent nonprofit organization does to the network of organizations with which we work. And so once we expand out to that scale, we're talking about conservation work that Cuenca Los Ojos does, who's one of our network partners in both Arizona and northern Sonora and into Chihuahua, where they own and manage hundreds of thousands of acres. And so, and then we're talking about other partners a little more locally that are doing slightly different work than BRN, Borderlands Restoration Network, in the strict sense is doing. So really that is my goal, and for the future, you asked a little bit earlier about where I see us going, is expanding from our very local communities, expanding out to a little bit more of a regional perspective, because if we're honest, we can do as much as we can to strengthen those relationships that we talked about locally, but really a strong regional economy is needed to support those local economies independently.
Right, and give people more options in how in their livelihoods.
Correct.
And part of that too is the educational opportunities and services that BRM provides. I know there's Bessie that you might want to describe, but also the field school, which we talked with Juliet Hivanti about, where individuals from really anywhere, but we try to, I think, focus on Sonora and Arizona, can come, and they may have learned some theory in school, but they can actually come and get some hands-on experience and training and get those and learn skills that are transferable to where they live. But if you could describe a little of that would be fantastic.
Sure. So our lifelong learning program, we have set it up in such a way that it has a number of different rungs, not unlike those on a ladder. We try to get contact, at least in our local communities, with young kids in the age of middle school age, with some of our arts and ecology program, get them starting to think about their local ecosystems, the watershed in which they live, starting to see it in a little slightly different way, hopefully priming the pump so that they show some interest in joining some of our education programs that come a little bit later on. The one that you referenced earlier, Bessie, which is our Borderlands Earth Care Youth Program, which is essentially a paid internship and leadership training course. It's paid for the high school students, and they go through a 6-week training course where they're learning, as you mentioned, hands-on restoration activities, and a real wide suite of things, actually, from rainwater catchment, harvest, to learning about native plants and pollinated species, to learning about the history of the area, and some of the uses for our native plants as far as wild food and medicine, as well as fiber and arts. So that course is one of our flagships, and it has been one of our longest running education programs, and very successful. We currently offer that here in Patagonia as well as in Douglas, and looking to expand it to other border communities. Then kind of next rung up in our lifelong learning ladder is our fields course, which is operational right now, actually. Yesterday was the first day, and it is geared a little more toward college and university students. It is it's an intensive and immersive course that covers all, as much as we can within 4 weeks, of the ecological, economic, social, historical, political issues surrounding the Borderlands.
So pretty straightforward, not complex.
Not complex. There's a lot of integration that is required, which is sort of why it's aimed at kind of college, university level. We have this is our third year running it. The first year was a bit of a pilot. Last year was kind of our first formal year, and this year we have one of the returning participants from last year, Sarah Federley, who's come back to facilitate. And I see that as we've as an organization have learned a lot from last year, but to get one of the participants to return is an element throughout all of our education programs that we strive for. So the Bessie, the Borderlands Earth Care Youth Program, is no exception. This year in Patagonia, we also had a returning participant from a few years back. One of our local Bessie Patagonia participants come back as one of the facilitators, and so we really see it as that trying to open the opportunities for those young people that remain interested to continue being involved in those programs and evolving into more leadership roles in those programs.
Yeah, sort of like you said, rungs on a ladder towards a career.
Right. And then we still have yet more. We offer paid internships for those either participants, geared to open to most anyone that comes to us with interest and an interesting idea often. But a number of those have been filled by participants from our field course or other volunteers that have come and shown up and wanted to get involved. I endeavor to create an organization that is alive and is a platform by which or for which people can attach and bring their ideas. That's an open conversation, and people that want to do positive work within the sphere that we operate, which is admittedly fairly wide. We're more than willing to collaborate and talk about how that best fits in with what we're currently doing and how we might progress those forward. So we offer those internships, and we have a fellowship program as well for some of our staff, which allows more for young professionals on our staff to further develop their professional skills. Allows them to travel to conferences, to learn new skill sets, and with the idea that that's beneficial to the organization, that they improve themselves, and it improves the whole system.
Yeah, that's great. That's a fantastic part. I hadn't remembered until you just mentioned those opportunities for staff. I think the real benefit of BRN, Borderlands Restoration Network, and its allied organizations is relevance to the outside world, because a lot of nonprofit work, especially in ecology, is done in forests, or it's done on maybe grasslands, but separate from communities for the most part. Certainly the communities will benefit, but they don't know how or why, and this makes those connections, which is you have to have if programs like this or things that are going to hopefully become more sustainable communities and more sustainable economies, for them to first become and then last. Because without all those connections, it's sort of one-offs, and that really, at the end of the day, doesn't get us where we need to go.
Precisely, yeah.
So I really appreciate your time and appreciate your very, very good work. I know you're extremely busy, and it's a real challenge. I mean, I think this is really where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, where theory and practice come together to make a difference in the world. And it's a great place to be, but it's also, I know, difficult work. So I appreciate everything you've done and been able to do.
Well, thank you again for all the support that you've given us and continue to